I had no idea it was that huge, that big of a church. I always thought it was just some people singing, okay? But I found out a lot, and it was very interesting. So I'm just gonna go because I saw some themes in there that I pulled out that I want to share with you all. Okay. Let me tell you what the themes are before I get into the details of what I saw in this documentary. So the documentary, I saw it on Discovery Plus. It might be somewhere else, YouTube, something, I don't know. But that's where I saw it. So the themes that I saw, and it's like there's nothing new here. Okay? There's absolutely nothing new here. Power and position, emotion and belonging, belief and escape, and the process, which we miss, which we miss. So I'll just pull out some things that caught my attention, and then I'll get to what I mean by those themes. So apparently, Hillsong is a megachurch, okay, that started in Sydney, Australia. And in the beginning of the documentary, they were interviewing people who were members and had been, doing lighting and volunteering and all that. They had nothing but amazing things to say. Apparently, it was a church where you felt like you belong. There was a lot of diversity. It was a safe space. You can be whatever you wanted. They said, come as you are. Someone said it was a place I could call home. One lady said they put on this show, this front, and she said, I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe it. Apparently the person who's in charge, or at least was until a couple days ago, is Brian Houston. And he, like when his father started it, but then, he took over and he wanted it to do well. So he came over to the US to look at the way we do church over here, and he looked around and liked what he saw regarding the prosperity. Y'all know what the prosperity gospel is, right? Where, you believe in God and God is going to bless you with all these different things and all that stuff. Okay. So he adopted that and he took that back to Australia where Hillsong was. And he was basically, one lady described it as, he came over here to investigate how church was done in the United States. So he went back over there to give consumers what they were asking for, which I thought was really interesting. Like, she didn't say the church members, okay? She said consumers, what they were asking for and what they wanted. And some of the things they wanted: to be happy, to be a part of something bigger, to feel useful, to be right, to feel like they're in a family. It was very interesting. One of the ladies said that when Hillsong came over here to the United States, it was in a place in somewhere in New York City where there weren't a lot of Christians, like in that community, which was perfect. Like, you don't want to put a church in the middle of a whole bunch of Christians because you're trying to get people to come in. She said that they wanted it in the midst of sinners, okay, because they wanted them to come into the church, the younger people. And it was really interesting because they said that the people coming in, they felt like, oh, this is church? Like, this is easy. Because nobody was really, how did she say that? Nobody was, did I write it down? Nobody was really asking about sin or confronting them about sins. It was just about going in there and feeling good, So let me get back to Mr. Houston here, Brian Houston. So he came up with what they called a way for him to, like, a bunch of mission statements or a church vision that he called the Church I See. And when you listen to it, it reminds me of the Martin Luther King "I Have a Dream" speech, because Martin Luther, the way he said, because he keeps saying, the church that I see, da 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 da, and the church that I see. You know how Martin Luther King did. he would say some stuff and then be like, I have a dream. And that was like his theme. I have a dream, you know? So this was the same thing, the church that I see, which apparently is something that's just going to, you know, take over the world, I guess. Now, as they got further into the documentary, they talked about how Hillsong did a phenomenal job of using music to manipulate the people. Okay. They called it emotional manipulation through music. All right. Someone even said the music is weaponized to get money from people. I've never heard of music being weaponized, you know, but you know, the way that they set this, and this is a narrative, okay, and this is one side, you know, I'm just telling you what I heard and you know, the impression I got. So this one guy, he had 6 things that he felt that Hillsong was really good at, the Hillsong empire, okay? It was church, they had concerts, CDs or music, they have a college, a cinema, and conferences. Okay. That's his 6 C's, he calls it. Okay. Church, concerts, CDs, college, cinema, and conferences. Now, the person, oh, that's what she said. She said, we don't have to deal with sin because no one asks about it. You know, they don't ask about it. So we don't have to deal with it. Now, in the United States, the person who was big with Hillsong, his name was Carl Lentz. I think I'm saying that right. Lentz, Carl Lentz. And somebody in the documentary explained what he did. So he was very charismatic, a young guy, handsome, married, you know, he very compelling. People described him as, they also described him as narcissistic, and you know, but just somebody. He made friends with Justin Bieber, so Justin Bieber started going to Hillsong, and a lot of other celebrities like Kevin Durant. He had a picture with Jay-Z. What's that other girl name? And a bunch of other people like Kanye and his sister-in-law there. Those folks there. Okay. And so somebody compared it to Scientology, where, you know, Scientology is known for the celebrities that are like Tom Cruise and some John Travolta, I think, is in Scientology, or used to be, something like that. But it's kind of like the same thing, right? And and somebody mentioned, so they said that Hillsong, when the celebrities and stuff started to come in, now you could see a really clear caste system where you had to be at a certain level to sit in the front of the church. Now that happens even in podunk churches. Okay, you ain't got to be, you only the mothers sit in the front, you know, on that front pew, and the deacon, like, this is reserved for the deacons. You know what I'm saying? So that wasn't new to, I mean, you know, that wasn't new to me. We've been doing that. Okay. But that was, I guess, with this, when the celebrities came in, that was something that changed, you know, and people are actually told, no, you got to get up. You cannot sit here, you know, in this thing. So that was a huge deal. And somebody mentioned, and I got to look this up. He said it reminded him of Jewish synagogues where you have to pay to sit in the front. Is that true? I never heard that before. I've never heard that before, so I got to look that up. But that was interesting. And one young lady said she wanted to be a part of Hillsong because she wanted to be powerful and cool, like the guy Lentz, you know, powerful, cool, and she wanted to move people like the way he was doing, you know. And then the documentary went back to Lentz when he was pastoring at a place called Wave Church. I think it was somewhere in one of the Carolinas. And he was very strict there. Like at Hillsong, he was like that too. But, you know, in his earlier days, he was really, so she gave an example where she and her boyfriend had premarital sex and they felt terrible about it, you know, of course, because they sinned and all that. So they got up and they went in front of the church, and they went to the back with what's his name again? What's his first name? Something Lentz. Carl. They went to the back and told him what they did. So he suspended them for 6 months from being on the committees or something. But he also told them they couldn't talk to each other for 6 months, okay, because it was terrible what they did. And they didn't, and they ended up not ever talking again. But she said she married somebody that she only knew for 3 months because they had sex, and she didn't want to go to him again and say, hey, I messed up again. She got married rather than going to him again, because the first time she said she just felt really judged, and terrible for what she did. And she didn't want to experience that again. So she got married after 3 months, So the documentary went further on to say there was a very clear pattern of secrecy at Hillsong. Now, Carl ended up having at least one, the lady who came forward, at least one affair with somebody when he was the main one talking about purity. And, like he was always preaching about purity and stuff, you know how that goes. Okay. Hillsong, they wanted to change the world. And there are some people who were at the college, some young people who talked about, they finally discovered that what they were doing at Hillsong College was free labor. Like, that's basically what it was. They were being, one girl said her whole college practicum was cleaning the church, Another one was doing brochures, and all this stuff was for free, okay, because they were students and they had to do stuff. Now, this right here, I didn't even know it was going in this direction, but they have like 3 chapters to this documentary. The last one, they mentioned child abuse. I said, come on now. I did not expect it to go. I thought this was going to be about old boy spending money and sleeping with women who wasn't his wife and, and all that stuff. But apparently Frank Houston, who is the founder of, what's now called Hillsong, there was a victim testimony of a person who said when he was around 7 or 8, Frank Houston molested him. And Frank Houston is Brian, the current head of Hillsong, Brian. That's his father. Okay. So that the last part of the documentary goes a lot into that and what happened to him and the lack of response from Hillsong. So the documentary talked about the desire for Brian, the head of Hillsong, to transform society. Like, that's his end game, is to transform society. But the only problem with that is when you transform society, then you typically try to transform it into your own image, right? And she talked about 7 mountains. I've never heard of this. 7 mountains are kingdom now. That sounds like a Jehovah Witness type thing, but I don't know. And the 7 mountains, so these are the 7 things that Christians are going to conquer: religion, government, entertainment, and something else, 4 other things I didn't bother writing down. But they they really literally want to just take over the world for the Lord and create heaven on earth. You know the story. Now, apparently, what's today? 3/28. 5 days ago, Brian Houston stepped down from Hillsong. And someone said it was really interesting that he did it then because this documentary, just came out. Now, at the beginning, I talked about some themes that I saw: power and position. I mean, I don't even know what else to say about that, because power and, we want to feel like we're in control and have decision-making power. And, all that was there. Emotion and belonging. This thing about weaponizing music, that was super interesting to me, because many of the people in the documentary talked about how they would go in the church and the chords of the music was so poignant that they would just, I mean, it would evoke tears. They would just cry. And one girl was like, I wasn't even like Christian like that, and I would just go in there and the music would just, and I believe that. I know, y'all know how music is, what music can do. So they really, and one thing she said that was interesting too was the songs, she said you can go to Hillsong church every Sunday for 2 years and never hear the same song twice. She said because what they did was they created songs, and at the church service they would test them to see the reaction, to see how. And she said she found it very interesting that Sunday was the day that Hillsong tested their products. I was like, wow, that's something else. Belonging. When you walk in, they showed a sign that says, you belong here. You belong here. Like, who doesn't want to belong? Who doesn't want to belong somewhere? And then belief and escape. In the beginning, the girl was saying how all of this, the whole picture they were painting, she wanted to believe it, and she did everything she could to believe it. All right. Until it just became unbelievable. And escape. Everybody's story, just like our stories, okay, are about, like, forget about what the thing, like, I want to be and it's going to be or whatever. Every story at its root is about not being here or not being this. You know what I'm saying? It's about not being whatever it is we feel we are. Okay. This was so clear in this documentary. Just listening to these various stories. It was so clear, so clear. The process. So at the end, one of the guys said, like, what is Hillsong? Is it a church? Is it a business? Is it a Fortune 500? Like, what is it? And I think we spend a little bit too much time trying to name something, okay, rather than looking at the process. And what do I mean by that? I mean, rather than looking at what's happening, rather than we're so desperate to name it, to call it a church or a family or a marriage or a relationship. We're so desperate to name something that we totally overlook what's happening. We overlook what's being produced. We overlook how we feel. I mean, we overlook all kind of things because we're so desperate to give it a name. Because when we do that, when we give it a name and we call it a family or we call it a church or whatever label we put on it, what we tend to do is we ignore all the things that tell us that's not what that is. Okay? We ignore we just kick it completely out of our minds don't even have time to process anything because we've already labeled it as a church. Okay? So all the shenanigans that churches don't do, all that goes out the window because it doesn't fit the definition, And this is more than about Hillsong. I mean, we get caught up in this in everything. Okay? But if we just stay where you are, like whatever, but just take the label off and look around and see what's actually happening. What's being produced? What are you producing? And I'm not just talking about physical things. What kind of feelings are being produced? What kind of thoughts? Look at that, before you're so desperate to label something as something. And then ask yourself the question, is this useful? Like, is this really what I want? You know, is it useful for me? Is it useful for others? Is it producing what I wanted to produce? Am I producing what I want to produce? Or am I just trying to shoehorn all this stuff into what I've called it, a church, a relationship, a family, a marriage? Okay. Well, whatever the title is. All right. So again, it's on Discovery Plus. It's called Hillsong. What was the name of it? Hillsong. Something about a megachurch, child. It was interesting. It was very interesting. Not too long, but it was good. So I also wanted to say, I just found out that Fran Bennett passed away. I don't know if y'all know. If you're in the non-dual community, I'm sure you know Fran Bennett. He was a transgendered man. I don't know how to say that. But when a man goes to a woman, I don't know if that's a transgendered man, possibly. I don't know. But Fran Bennett, and it must have been some months ago that she passed. So I was just really sorry to hear that, because I know she, I would see her on Facebook putting stuff on there about where she was, and she needed assistance for things a lot. But somebody did a GoFundMe for her. I don't remember the name, but if you're on Facebook, I'm sure you can just type in Frances Fran Bennett, I think is what it was, and you'll find it. But that was very sad. But I just wanted to mention her on here. And I got some other stuff to say, but I'll just make another video about that. Okay. All right. Y'all have a good night. I will see you back here next time. Bye.